knowledge.
Welcome to a new episode of the Oasis of Knowledge.
Are you trying to be the clever mastermind?
Indeed, my friend, I've got you all figured out. Aren't you a bit too enigmatic? My dear, I'm starting to feel suspicious of you. Where exactly were you yesterday between 6:25 and 7:35? I know your every move.
In this episode, I've brought you a detective and an investigator. On January 1st of every year, literary circles celebrate Public Domain Day, a day when certain iconic literary characters become public domain, free from the control of their creators or heirs. January 1st, 2023 marked the liberation of a truly unique character, one who has transcended ownership to become part of global culture. No need for guesses. I'm talking about none other than Detective Sherlock Holmes. A character so brilliant that one glance from him could unravel all your secrets. Holmes, finally free for all humanity, now belongs to us.
Indeed, the world's most famous detective is now in the public domain.
Our story today revolves around his original creator, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, a genius writer, exceptional athlete, inventor, and bold visionary. He was among the highest-paid authors in history, earning immense wealth during his time. Just imagine if writers were paid per word today. Doyle's contemporary equivalent might only be J.K. Rowling. At the height of Sherlock Holmes' success, which became a societal phenomenon in Victorian London, Conan Doyle made a shocking decision. He decided to kill his most beloved character. Yes, you heard right. The brilliant mind behind Sherlock Holmes plotted his own fictional detective's demise. Why would a writer end the life of the very character that cemented his fame? Little did he know that his experiments with storytelling would birth an entirely new genre. Sherlock Holmes wasn't just another detective, he was revolutionary. His sharp observation skills and scientific methods redefined crime-solving in fiction. Many iconic characters, from Hercule Poirot to Dr. House, owe their existence to Holmes' legacy. The formula Doyle created, a murder, an investigation, and the resolution, set the standard for all modern detective stories. Holmes's inspiration came partly from Joseph Bell, Doyle's medical professor, whose keen powers of deduction left a lasting impression. But Doyle's true genius lay in creating Dr. John Watson, Holmes' loyal companion and the story's narrator. Watson serves as the bridge between Holmes' extraordinary intellect and us, the readers. Watson's human flaws and relatable perspective bring balance to Holmes' larger-than-life persona. Their partnership, a brilliant but eccentric genius paired with a grounded and loyal friend, became the blueprint for countless detective duos. Doyle's first Holmes story, A Study in Scarlet, was published for a modest $25. Though its initial reception was lukewarm, it laid the foundation for an enduring literary legacy. The magic of Holmes and Watson continues to captivate audiences, proving that great stories truly stand the test of time. Because the publishing house believed the market was flooded with cheap crime novels, Doyle's first story, now considered a classic, failed commercially when it debuted. However, Doyle wasn't fazed by this failure. He dismissed Holmes as merely a character of pulp fiction, a tool for earning quick money while he focused on what he believed to be his true calling, grand historical novels. Writing crime stories for him was just a formula. Crime, investigation, murderer, case closed. A fast job, nothing more. But my dear friend, Doyle's plans took an unexpected turn. An American publisher read the story and was thoroughly impressed. During a visit to London, the publisher invited Doyle to a dinner where none other than the celebrated Oscar Wilde was also present. The publisher proposed an intriguing idea. Each of them would write a story to be featured in a new magazine he was launching in England. Wilde produced the masterpiece, The Picture of Dorian Gray, while Doyle reluctantly revisited Sherlock Holmes, crafting a short story with the detective as the protagonist. The publisher offered £100 for the story, a small fortune at the time, especially for Doyle, who had just become a father. Though hesitant, Doyle submitted the story, considering it another quick project. What followed was life-changing. A year later, the Strand magazine approached him, asking for more Holmes adventures. Doyle, strapped for cash, agreed reluctantly, viewing it as just another job. But this time, something extraordinary happened. The stories captured readers' imaginations. Holmes's popularity soared, and the Strand secured a deal with Doyle for 6 monthly stories at £150, a groundbreaking arrangement at the time. Critics argue that this episodic storytelling format laid the groundwork for the serialized narratives we passionately follow in modern television dramas. Yet Holmes's success brought an unwelcome complication. Doyle's literary ambitions were overshadowed by his creation. Even his older, unsuccessful stories found new life. Imagine, dear friend, if you owned a struggling company, hired someone out of necessity, and that person not only saved your business, but brought in immense profits, and yet you resented them for taking over your life. That was Doyle's predicament with Holmes. The stories not only spotlighted Sherlock, but also brought Victorian London to life. A city shrouded in mystery and danger, its alleys hiding crimes and its fog cloaking horrors. It was a perfect setting, especially as the legend of Jack the Ripper haunted Londoners. Holmes's triumphs symbolized the victory of reason over fear, logic over superstition. Holmes reassured readers that science and intellect could unravel even the darkest mysteries. His cutting-edge methods, such as fingerprint analysis, blood spatter interpretation, and chemical experiments, predated their use in real-life criminology. Even Edmond Locard, the father of modern forensics, credited Holmes as an inspiration when establishing his laboratory in Lyon in 1910. But why, my dear, does Holmes still captivate us in an era when his methods are considered primitive? The answer lies in his character. Sherlock Holmes was no conventional hero. He was abrasive, dismissive, and socially inept. His brilliance in solving crimes came at the cost of his humanity. Beyond his intellectual pursuits, nothing else seemed to matter to him. When his mind wasn't occupied, he turned to cocaine, spiraling into addiction. Holmes was a genius, but not a happy one, a paradox that evokes both admiration and sympathy. This archetype, flawed yet brilliant, was later echoed in characters like Dr. Gregory House. Much like Holmes, House resided at 221B, a nod to Baker Street, had a sharp intellect, and shared a similar social rudeness. Yet his physical pain and emotional vulnerability made him relatable. We couldn't hate these characters no matter how infuriating they seem. This duality, imperfect yet extraordinary, creates a bond between the audience and such characters. They embody human contradictions, dazzling us with their brilliance while revealing their flaws. Doyle's success with Holmes enabled him to fund his passion for historical novels. But when these novels hit the market, they were met with indifference. Readers clamored for more Holmes, not historical epics. This rejection was a bitter blow to Doyle, who saw himself as a serious writer, not a pop fiction author. Despite Holmes's monumental success, Doyle considered him an obstacle to his true literary aspirations. The letters he received were not addressed to Arthur Conan Doyle, but to Sherlock Holmes himself. Many readers, so captivated by the vividness of the character, believed Holmes was a real person. And here, my dear friend, the seed of an idea began to sprout in Doyle's mind, the notion of killing off Holmes. When Doyle shared this idea with his mother, she was outraged and adamantly opposed it. Shortly after, the Strand magazine approached him, asking for another series of Holmes stories. Doyle, exasperated, thought, "Let me make the offer impossible," and demanded an exorbitant sum. "Hello, yes, I'm the one who requested that amount, and no, I won't accept a penny less. If you're not interested, I can easily take this to another publisher." "What's that? You agree? You'll pay in cash?" "Well, damn it, Sherlock, you'll forever haunt me." To Doyle's surprise, they accepted his terms, offering £1,000 for 12 new stories, triple what he'd initially earned. And so Doyle found himself trapped in a gilded cage named Sherlock Holmes. But his obsession with ridding himself of Holmes wasn't purely financial. While Joseph Bell inspired Holmes's logical mind and keen observation, the darker aspects of the detective were rooted in Doyle himself. Holmes's bouts of melancholy, mood swings, and even his cocaine use mirrored Doyle's troubled upbringing. His father's alcoholism, his mother's scandalous affair, and the violence that often accompanied drunkenness, all these shadows crept into Holmes's character. Doyle's historical novels, by contrast, represented an escape into a world of chivalry and ideals, a world far removed from his painful past. But as Holmes' popularity grew, Doyle's own identity seemed to diminish. Holmes was no longer just a fictional detective. He became larger than life, overshadowing even his creator. It was as though Doyle's imagination had birthed a monster that refused to be tamed. He felt like a servant to his creation, a secretary to the character he'd conjured. Imagine creating something from your mind only to find it dominating your life, its demands eclipsing your own desires. That's precisely how Doyle felt. Determined to reclaim his freedom, Doyle decided to kill Holmes. In his memoirs he wrote, "I resolved to bury him, even if it meant burying my bank account with him." And true to his nature as a meticulous storyteller, Doyle planned an extraordinary demise for his legendary detective. Enter Professor Moriarty Holmes's intellectual equal and ultimate adversary. Drawing inspiration from the name of a childhood bully, Doyle crafted Moriarty as a shadowy counterpart to Holmes, equally brilliant but malevolent. Their final confrontation was set at the breathtaking Reichenbach Falls in Switzerland, a location Doyle had discovered during his travels. The story, titled The Final Problem, was published in December 1893. In it, Holmes solves one last mystery before facing Moriarty. The two grapple atop the falls, a symbolic clash of light and darkness, before plunging together into the abyss. This iconic scene became one of the most memorable in literary history, endlessly adapted in films and series. Doyle, finally free from the character he had grown to resent, felt a sense of liberation. He had, in his words, slaughtered the goose that laid the golden eggs without a shred of regret. But while Doyle was relieved, the readers were devastated. It was as if a real-life tragedy had occurred. Many couldn't accept Holmes's death. Some went to work wearing black in mourning. One reader described Doyle as cold-hearted and lamented the loss as if Holmes were a flesh-and-blood friend. The backlash was swift and severe. More than 20,000 readers cancelled their subscriptions to the Strand. In Australia, sales of the magazine plummeted. Even members of the royal family were rumoured to be in shock. Despite pleas and threats from fans worldwide, Doyle remained unmoved. "Holmes is gone, and that's final," he declared. He refused to resurrect the detective, no matter the outcry. Holmes's name, Doyle said, began to make him feel physically ill. Thus, a bitter rivalry emerged, not between Holmes and Moriarty, but between Holmes and Doyle. While one gained immortal fame, the other struggled under the weight of his creation's success. "Wish I'd never created you." This sentiment captures how deeply Arthur Conan Doyle felt about Sherlock Holmes, a character who had become more of a curse than a blessing. Doyle found himself shackled, not to a man of flesh and blood, but to a fictional creation that refused to let him go. At times he would lament, "If only I'd created something simpler, crossword puzzles maybe, or light-hearted tales." Anything but you, Sherlock. Doyle and Holmes had reached a breaking point. It's either him or me, but ask yourself, my dear friend, how many know Arthur Conan Doyle and how many know Sherlock Holmes? In an effort to reclaim his life, Doyle embarked on adventures across the globe. He fought in South Africa during the Boer War, searching for the spirit of the adventurer within him. Upon his return, he was knighted and began working on a new series of historical novels. But even as Doyle sought a fresh chapter, the world couldn't move on from Holmes. The public's demands were relentless. The writer is away on an expedition. We want Holmes. The writer is crafting a historical masterpiece. We want Holmes. Despite Doyle's best efforts, his historical novels couldn't capture readers' imaginations the way Holmes had. As anthropologist David Graeber once noted, "When you succeed at something, the world conspires to ensure you keep doing only that." Doyle felt trapped by his success, unable to escape the shadow of the detective he had brought to life. Eventually, Doyle gave in. Not out of artistic inspiration, but out of necessity. "I'll bring Holmes back," he declared, "but on my terms." Rather than resurrect Holmes outright, Doyle chose to write a prequel, The Hound of the Baskervilles. This eerie tale was unlike anything before it. Holmes wasn't battling criminal masterminds or sinister conspiracies. Instead, he faced an otherworldly menace, a monstrous black hound that roamed the misty moors, spreading fear and dread. The story's tone was dark and unsettling, and Holmes himself appeared only sparingly. Dr. Watson, often portrayed as a bumbler beside the brilliant detective, became the narrative's focus. Holmes, distant and enigmatic, made rare appearances, and when he did, his character seemed to straddle the line between light and darkness. He appeared almost menacing at times, as if Doyle wanted to cast a shadow over the once glorified detective. Was this artistic license, or was Doyle subtly exacting revenge on Holmes for years of frustration? Yet, despite this unconventional return, The Hound of the Baskervilles became the most famous story in the entire series. Its success proved that even after 8 years, the world's appetite for Holmes was insatiable. Readers clamored for more, and the Strand magazine increased their pressure and their offers to Doyle. Still, Doyle resisted. He refused to revive Holmes outright, asserting that the detective was gone for good. But resistance wanes when met with a generous offer. When Doyle was presented with $30,000 for 6 stories, equivalent to millions today, he couldn't refuse. And so, on September 23, 1903, Sherlock Holmes returned from the dead. Doyle concocted an explanation for Holmes's survival. The detective had used a Japanese wrestling move to escape Moriarty's grasp at Reichenbach Falls. During his absence, known to fans as the Great Hiatus, Holmes had traveled the world, adopting new identities, visiting Tibet, Mecca, and Khartoum. Though Doyle had seemingly surrendered, he maintained a delicate balance in his relationship with Holmes. Over the next 33 adventures, Doyle fleshed out Holmes's backstory, revealing details about his aristocratic lineage, his brother Mycroft's position in the British government, and Watson's eventual marriage. This effort to humanize Holmes was Doyle's way of asserting control over his creation, striving for peaceful coexistence. At times, Doyle even played detective himself, solving real-life cases, including the exoneration of an Indian lawyer wrongly convicted of animal cruelty. In the end, Doyle's struggle with Holmes wasn't just about a writer and his character. It was a battle of imagination versus reality, creation versus creator. And though Doyle may have felt burdened by Holmes, his reluctant masterpiece has become an enduring legend, a testament to the power of storytelling. But Doyle will prove that he is innocent and that the reason for his condemnation is his Indian origins. Can you imagine? Doyle felt insecure towards a character he created like, "By the way, I'm as tough as you. I know how to achieve it. I prove innocent people and evidence. When I stay at home, I don't drink cocaine, but go fight in South Africa. I find this story great, my friend." Arthur is not content with only playing the role of detective. No, he is also trying himself in politics. After his brother died, and then his eldest son in World War I, he goes to a completely unexpected area, which is not the same field that Holmes excelled in. Doyle, the rational man, who made the character of Holmes based on reason and belief in reason, is enthusiastic about the world of spirituality and becomes one of its staunchest advocates, and about the ability of the living to communicate with the dead. Despite being mocked, he did not care. When 2 girls from school in a village claimed that they could photograph fairies, Doyle considered these drawings conclusive evidence of what he was saying. But the truth that one of the 2 girls confessed to, that you probably know if you watch the previous episodes, that these pictures were fake, according to the girl's admission. The girl made this confession decades after Doyle's death. Imagine that the creator of the great Sherlock Holmes, two girls deceived him. Arthur wrote in the final adventure of Sherlock Holmes that he was on pension. He sent him to retirement. He described him to readers as a fashion whose time has passed and should stop. But on July 7th, 1930, when Arthur Conan Doyle died, he was mourned in a way that forms the final victory of Sherlock Holmes and the complex relationship that was established between the author and the work. What's pathetic, my friend, is when Edinburgh wanted to honor its son, they did not make a statue of the writer, but they made a statue of the character he created, Sherlock Holmes. Doyle left behind a vast legacy, including 4 novels and 56 short stories. The irony is that whatever he wrote outside the world of Sherlock Holmes was forgotten in a few years. But the biggest irony is that Doyle himself forgot. People of our time know who Sherlock Holmes is. No one knows Conan Doyle or how connected to him. Recently, my friend, a major newspaper conducted a poll to ask young people, asking them, which of the characters in front of you is real and imaginary? The surprise, my friend, is that people saw Churchill as a fictional character, but Sherlock Holmes as a real character. Holmes, my friend, has got personality, presence, and credibility bigger than Churchill, who won Hitler in World War II. History is my favorite scriptwriter, I swear. Holmes is the one who was able to remove his maker from the collective memory. He continues to live and continue his adventures in no less than 120 novels. This doesn't include films, series, comics, and manga. The writers quickly realized that Holmes didn't have to stay in Victorian London, but he can change countries, places, and time periods. It is translated into 50 languages and appears in every media outlet you can imagine, with many different nationalities. In 2023, he will be freed from the control of Doyle's family, and it became public property. In the end, my friend, Doyle lost his battle with Sherlock because he was just a mortal human, but Holmes achieved immortality simply because he represents a much bigger idea than its creator. This tells you, my friend, that good imagination is immortal and the boring, monotonous reality is mortal. That's why, my friend, I honored you and treated you as a fictional character. That's all, my friend. Last but not least, I hope you watch the old episodes and the new ones. Check the sources below and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And remember that a good imagination can live much longer than reality. Now, my friend, I have great fear that the wise character does to me what Sherlock Holmes did to Arthur Conan Doyle.